All right, let's keep it quiet. Watch a show.
Oh, yes, no.
It's that time of year again when people look forward to Mayflowers, blossoming gardens, Mother's Day, Father's Day, July 4th activities, summer vacations, and more. But for those of us in faith formation, we are planning ahead for Vacation Bible School, missions or retreats, and for next year. One of the best ways to plan for future events is to look back and evaluate how we did last year. So we'll be looking at evaluating your catechetical year tonight on Catechist Stream. Well, welcome back to Catechist Stream, where we support catechists in their baptismal role. We address current catechetical issues, and we support missionary discipleship. It's where we're learning to swim upstream. Right, Deacon Matt?
Yes, that is true, Steve. We learn to swim upstream here. I'm excited also about tonight's topic, and think you will be too. We're coming to you live, as always, from our studio, aka the aquarium. So let us know where you're viewing from, and if you're new, put new in the comments. We'd love to give you a shout out. Always love to see new fellow fish swimming upstream with us.
Yes, do put new in the comments and let us know. Let us know. I already saw one person did say, let's see if I can share that. Carolyn Gehring from Covington, Georgia. Thanks, Carolyn.
Woo!
Woohoo! So, What else do you need to know? You need to know that we're coming to you
Matt's
live.
eating a banana.
Are you eating a banana?
I am. This is dinner.
Hey, you got to eat when you can get it, right?
Part of swimming upstream, buddy.
Part of swimming upstream. I love it. Well, if you happen to miss a show, don't worry. We do record these, and you can view the entire episode on catechiststream.com, as well as on YouTube or our Facebook group, Advance Your Expertise in Catechesis.
Last week we learned a lot about Mary as the model disciple and May crownings, but this week we'll be looking at evaluating your catechetical year.
That's right, Deacon Matt. So we wanted to start off with a question for you, our viewers. So here's the question for you. Do you evaluate the catechetical year?
It sounds so ominous.
That was the point.
Do you evaluate it? I am the evaluator.
I am the evaluator, this or that. Right. And there were rocks too. Did you happen to notice it's not like feathers or something, stuffed animal? Because no one likes to evaluate, I don't think. I really don't. So we're going to try to provide
be evaluated.
Or be evaluated. Exactly. So we're going to try to provide you with some helpful tips tonight on Catechist Stream. But answer the question. Do you evaluate your program? We try to make it easy for you, yes or no. So let us know in the chat box. And if you have questions as we go along, please put a Q in front of it so we can more easily find your question. We'd be happy to address it. Deacon Matt, tonight we'll talk about evaluating your catechetical year. Why is that important?
Oh, it's so important. And it's a little bit broader than our show on evaluating catechetical curriculum. That's just sort of in general, some tips on evaluating that. So if you saw that show, don't be like, why are these guys doing this show? Because this show is all about the year, which includes the goals that you've set. Did you meet those goals? How about anything the pastor wanted you to accomplish, as well as diocesan guidelines? How are you assessing those goals? And do you do any kind of capstone projects or events at the end of the year?
Yeah, good question. And so let us know in the chat box if you evaluate, and if so, what do you do to evaluate? Also want to put a shout out to Andrea Slavin, Diocese of Syracuse. Thanks for joining us tonight on Catechist Stream. Woohoo!
I got to ask real quick, Steve. So we had 2 new people tonight, which is awesome. Let us know in the chat box how you found out about Catechist Stream. Say like social media, or somebody told me, or you were on the master class last week. Just let us know. Yeah,
let us know. That's all. And Deacon Matt will let us know, how was the banana? That's inquiring minds.
Full. It's rich in vitamins and minerals.
He's going to keep going with that banana. This is a first on Catechist Stream, ladies and gentlemen. So you never know what's going to happen on Catechist Stream. So Deacon Matt eats a banana live on Catechist Stream tonight.
Yeah, that was actually the original topic for tonight, but we thought that is really lame. We've got to spice this up a little bit.
We've got to spice it up. Speaking of spicing it up, let's hear about the topics that we'll explore tonight on Catechist Stream.
Sounds great.
Evaluating your catechetical year.
Let's talk about goal setting.
Let's talk about catechetical program evaluation.
And capstone projects. Are we doing those? What do we think about those?
All of that tonight on Catechist Stream. Well, let's get started with our first topic, Deacon Matt. We are going to talk about DRE goal setting. That sounds fairly broad. What do we need to know about goal setting?
Well, we know that it takes a village to raise a child, right? That African truism is something that's true all around the world. It's true in the church too. And so that means when we goal set, we need to be thinking about a few things. We need to think about the goals that the diocese sets for us, like bishop guidelines or diocesan guidelines regarding catechesis for each grade level. If the pastor has particular catechetical objectives or goals, we got to try to meet those as well. And if we ourselves as DREs, catechetical leaders, have our own goals we're setting, like a goal for the very beginning of the catechetical year might be just survive this first month. Maybe that's your goal. And hopefully you did make that goal, because if you didn't, you might not be alive. And we hope you stay alive and keep swimming upstream. So we think about those three different areas of goals. So let's talk about the first one, diocesan guidelines. So I'm sure you're aware of what your catechetical guidelines are from the diocese. Usually they're pretty specific and detailed about, for each grade level, what are those different intellectual components that we want to have in place, the different concepts we want covered. It's very focused. Most of the time, guidelines are very focused on the intellectual objectives of catechesis. However, sometimes we see guidelines that include they want to see like signs of moral formation. So how do we gauge that? What do we do as a DRE, or how do we help catechists to gauge, whether people are living virtuous lives and that sort of thing? And Steve's going to talk about that a bit when he talks about assessment instruments, things that will help us to evaluate our goals and whether we achieve them. Along that line of virtues, do you see signs of faith? Do you see not just understanding of concepts, what could just be pure memorization, regurgitation of ideas, and on up the Bloom's taxonomy to application and evaluation? But does that necessarily mean that the child, or if we're talking about adults and adult faith formation, does it mean that they have faith, that they believe the things that they're saying, and they believe the things that they're applying and evaluating, or are they just jumping through hoops? So these are things that are more intentional kind of assessments. These are things that you have to, they're just more nuanced, but they're things that we can certainly look for. And Steve will talk about that in the next section. Also with diocesan guidelines, I think the challenge for the DRE is, how do we help the catechist who's probably going to just follow the textbook, or if it's an online resource or whatever you're using, almost verbatim. It depends on the individual catechist, whether there's going to be creativity there, pedagogical style and flair and savoir-faire. They have a good working knowledge of the concept, so they get creative with it and really engage classes. And we know that's kind of hit or miss with catechists. It just depends on gifts. It depends on time, bandwidth, interest level, all of that. But keeping in mind, like, the primary thing is not just the intellectual piece of faith formation, and are we checking off the items that the diocese gives us for every grade level from an intellectual standpoint, but do we view also growth in faith observed by habits, behaviors, how people treat each other, whether they're there at Mass, and also the things they say. And this is really important. I don't know if there's necessarily an official assessment tool for this, but you can gauge this throughout your year by asking children or whoever you're catechizing to reflect on their own journey of faith, either with you personally or with a peer or with the class, to have them articulate where they are in their journey, where God is, what their relationship with God is like, et cetera, et cetera. That to me is a proof positive that whatever you're doing is working, if they're able to articulate that faith journey in any kind of way. Pastor objectives. Sometimes pastors get really involved, and that's great. But there again, it's kind of hit or miss. There is some level of catechetical training in seminaries, although I think most DREs and catechetical kind of professional people would agree we'd like to see more. So even though we have a 6th edition coming out of the program for priestly formation, I still don't think there's quite enough in there. Encouragement, kind of even requirement around not only becoming familiar with the catechism, but familiar with catechetical history, how the church is taught over the centuries, why it's taught the way it's taught in certain ways, and what it's emphasized and why, and what can we learn from that. So to really develop priests and deacons into teachers. But some pastors really do have that gift and that interest level. So if you have one of those pastors, that might be a blessing for you. You might find it as a curse because maybe you collide with ideas and about how things should be, a clash of visions. But hopefully your pastor who's getting involved is setting goals for you, has a way to evaluate those goals for you. One of the worst things I've ever heard, and I've heard it multiple times at catechetical conferences, is that DREs either one, don't have job descriptions, or two, if they do have job descriptions, they're hardly ever evaluated on them, and probably not in a regular not like with a regular frequency. I'm trying to say, all challenging when you're trying to meet the goals of your pastor. So if there's any takeaway from tonight about that, it's, if you haven't already, to dialogue with your pastor about, do you have expectations, and if so, what they are, and how will we evaluate those? And finally, what goals do you have as a DRE? And again, it could be, I'm trying to survive. It's my first year. I'm trying to figure this whole thing out, which, by the way, is a lifelong pursuit. If you haven't figured it out, that's why it's called lifelong formation. I think I just said 4th formation, but I meant faith formation. Had a little bit of banana stuck on my tongue. At any rate, what were your personal goals? Why is that important? Or does it seem like just another superfluous level of detail? I'm telling you, it's super important. Why? Because it paints your own journey as a teacher, an administrator, but most importantly, as a disciple. Because hopefully your goals for catechesis aren't just, I taught the diocesan standards, I kept my pastor's expectations, and I kept catechists going, or something like that, and I kept people moving through the religious education machine. No, it was, hopefully I grew, and this is how I grew. I was challenged, and this is how I met or didn't meet the challenge. And do I still feel called? What an opportunity when you're evaluating yourself to ask those really deep questions. Because again, your pastor might not ask those of you. Your peers might not ask those of you. So it's up to you to do that kind of self-evaluation. So take advantage of that at any time along the year, but especially at the end of the year.
Great tips, Deacon Matt, on goal setting. It's so important to set some milestones that you're striving for, because we, especially in today's today's climate, we know how important it is in the Catholic Church to be very intentional about all the things that we do. And goal setting will help you to grow. Maybe we're not always reaching the goal, or we don't reach it as quickly, or sometimes we surpass a goal, which is fantastic, and then we set a new goal. So goal setting, I think, is very important. And you said something about warfare earlier? Savoir warfare? Yeah.
Oh, savoir-faire.
Oh, I thought you said savoir
Not
warfare.
warfare.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
Although ministry can be like warfare at times.
That's what I was trying to get at. So,
No.
but I knew I didn't hear that correctly. So,
Yeah.
I failed attempt at humor once again, Deacon Matt.
That's okay. Evaluate yourself.
And things happen. So, maybe banana gets stuck in your mouth when you're trying to talk.
Right.
So stuff happens. Anyway, I just want to point out that Andrea said that she heard about Catechist Stream from an email promotion. So we can see that here. Andrea, thanks for responding to that email
Thank
promotion.
you.
And what else do we have here? Debbie says she's from Independence, Ohio. And so Debbie and Andrea know each other. And I happen to know Andrea too. And I think Deacon Matt might know Andrea. So we're so glad you're here. Debbie asked a question. How often should we review goals?
Well, I guess it depends on the nature of the goal. So when we talk about SMART goals, we think about like goals that are achievable and and things that we can evaluate, and also along a timeline. So there would be goals perhaps that you would set for specific chunks of time, like maybe the first month, did I accomplish XYZ, or the first semester. So I think it really depends on the kind of goal you're looking at. If it's goal like retention, that's something you're probably looking at all year long. Do I still have the catechists I need? Are they leaving? What's going on? I mean, during COVID, when that first hit, 2019 into 2020, that was a big concern that had to be evaluated almost daily. Do I have the people I need? So it really depends on the kind of goal.
Yeah, it depends on the kind of goal, and there may be annual goals. So great question, Debbie. Thanks for posing that for us. Well, I'm not seeing anything else in the chat box at the moment, Deacon Matt, so let's move to the next topic. All right, our next topic tonight is catechetical program evaluation. Now, there is some overlap here. Goal setting is setting those milestones. Evaluating is really taking a look back and saying, it's kind of the process that you will determine whether or not you met your goals. And so we'll kind of talk a little tonight about evaluating your overall program, assessing catechist growth, and evaluating students. I think that's very important because we want to ensure that they are learning. That's always important to do. So let's kick it off with the overall program. Number one question, I think, or top two questions, what's the word on the street? Are people coming, and are they happy? And that's one way that you can evaluate your program, by talking to people. And so it may be parents, just touching base. And again, this could be at any frequency, but so how's it going? What's your child's or children's experience like in our program? Are you aware of all of the great things that we're doing? Do you have any questions for us that we can clarify? Do you have any suggestions? I think having conversations with people is an excellent way of evaluating, because you are able to reach people face to face that may or may not respond to a formal evaluation tool. So certainly you can send out an evaluation asking a lot of questions about your program, but having face-to-face conversations is very important. Another group of people that you could speak with are your volunteers or your catechists or teachers if you're in a school setting. So again, same type of questions. How are things going? Do you have everything you need? How can we better support you? What suggestions might you have for our program? If you're at a parish or even in a school setting, you could talk to the staff. You can talk to the parish staff, or you could talk to the faculty, sort of broader range, other teachers or other catechists, or certainly the leadership, catechetical leaders, about any insights that they might be able to provide. What have they observed that would be important for you to know about in your program? So that's another. And then certainly the clergy at your parish, because different roles around your community may hear different feedback. So in other words, a pastor may be having dinner, or something comes up about the faith formation program, and maybe they forget to share it, or it's something that they're not comfortable sharing. But if you prompt the conversation through questions, certainly anything important would surface. And it's never a bad thing to hear affirmation that your program is actually going well. So, and don't be afraid if someone has something to say that could improve your program. We can all do better, right? So I think assessing your overall program or evaluating your entire program, number one, you should have conversations with the different people that represent your program. Next is communication issues. Something to consider is, are we communicating effectively? Are we using the right modes? Is email reaching? Are the bulletins reaching? And in my experience and from conversations I've had, we have had to get really creative and communicate in so many different ways to be able to reach people's different preferences. Some people want text messages. Some people want emails. Some people read the bulletin. Some people look on the website. So there are so many different ways that we can communicate, but certainly that would be a question that you could ask, especially in those personal conversations or in a formal evaluation tool. Is everyone aware of what's happening? Are there any suggestions or glitches in the communication that you have not been aware of? Also, think about evaluating your print and digital learning resources. Certainly, I would say the majority of parishes, especially, well, definitely schools, and I think still parishes are relying on some sort of printed, textbook for their catechetical program. So, is this remaining effective? Are there challenges using the textbooks, that you need to be aware of? Are there challenges with them being left in the classroom? I mean, maybe that's something, a small thing that needs addressing. Or digital resources. Maybe you've embarked on using some new digital tools, and you need to know, are these effective? Are the parents able to access them to help their children? Are they family oriented? If they're specifically for the children, do they have access to the internet? Do they have access to hardware or devices to be able to access the digital learning resources that you're hoping that they're using? So all of these are very important areas to evaluate. And if you're sort of going by your observation, or I never heard anything negative about it, and continue on, if you're not prompting the question, you may not be getting all of the information. Or if you only hear from the people who say everything is great, because we all have those people, which are wonderful to have around. But we need to hear from a wide variety of voices. And then finally, you can engage in these more formal evaluations. It's so easy to create a survey monkey or some sort of Google form to create a survey and send those out. The challenge with those, again, is not everyone will respond to those. And so you may gather a limited perspective from those who do respond. You can have the informal conversations, like I mentioned. I think those are very important. And you can make your own observations, especially if you're a catechetical leader. Maybe you want to visit classrooms and observe what's happening in a classroom, just to sort of gather information yourself. So observations, personal observations, or assign someone to go and make observations, and they're looking for very specific information. Are the students engaged? Do they seem to be learning? Are the volunteers prepared? Are the catechists prepared? Are they familiar with the content for this week? Or is it, did it happen to be a free-for-all this week? Because we know that happens too. So there are a combination of ways that you can evaluate your program, and it's probably a good idea to consider using all of them. Just like the communication needs to be sent out in many different ways, maybe it's a good idea to use a combination of these formal evaluations, conversations, and observations. So that's one way of getting at your overall program and how things went. The next area would be assessing catechist growth, because the catechist has such a vital role in our faith formation programs. I always told catechists, and still do, when I'm presenting to catechists, this is the most important information the children will ever learn. This information is eternal. You're establishing a relationship. You're supporting a relationship. Maybe you're introducing these children to the person of Christ. And this is eternal. This never goes away. So it's very, very important that catechists can be as effective as they can be in their short amount of time that they have with the children. So how can you assess catechist growth? One thing you can do is conduct personal interviews. And maybe you want to schedule these. And with online conference software such as Zoom or Teams or Google Meets or whatever, it can be very easy just to schedule a quick 10-minute, 15-minute check-in with your catechists to sort of just talk about how things are going or how they went this year, and again, asking for any suggestions, recommendations, information that you may not be aware of. So personal interviews with catechists is a very good way to sort of evaluate. We're not necessarily evaluating that person in these types of interviews, but we're just trying to gather information. We know we're in the information age. Also, classroom observation that does look at the effectiveness of the catechist. It can be very intimidating, and I know that this is widely practiced in the academic setting. But just to stop in, it doesn't have to be intense, just to stop in and just take the pulse on what's happening, take any mental notes back with you that maybe would feed those personal interviews. So that could prompt questions or conversations about what you observe. Self-evaluations is another way that can be very effective for catechists to think about their own development as a faith formation leader, as one who's reflecting their faith with or to the children. So if you were to Google or ask your Facebook group for any recommendations on self-evaluations that may already be constructed, or create one of your own. They're very easy to do, and just think about what would help them to reflect on their role as a volunteer catechist and or a teacher in that setting, and that might prompt them to want to make some changes to learn and grow. Monitoring certification progress. Most dioceses have certification in place and would expect that at least the catechists are making progress in certifications. Not all, but if you're in a diocese that does have a certification program, it's a great idea to remind your catechist that there is an expectation that you're making progress in your certification. So monitoring their progress is a great way of evaluating and assessing catechist growth. Are they participating in this, or has it been a couple of years? So we know things happen. It's a great idea, though, just to go ahead and set that expectation that we really do encourage you to take part of our own parish training or diocesan training, or attend a national conference, especially if it's local. So that is another good tip. And then finally, encourage learning about using technology for catechesis. Now, obviously, we're on a live stream. We're using technology in a new way to support catechists. And we know that over the pandemic experience, that people were sort of forced to interact with technology, and some had a positive experience and some may never want to go back. But technology is not leaving us. The internet has been here a long time, email, and there are so many great ed tech type tools that can be used in the classroom, even if it's just showing a video. So encourage your catechist to learn something new in the way of technology, and maybe you think about your infrastructure and how could you support them with technology in the classroom to make it easier for them. So those are some ways to assess catechist growth. And then moving on to students, some of the things that Deacon Matt had mentioned, you can certainly have conversations with students any time of year. They will be, I think, brutally honest if you ask them a question. And so that's always a great way just to sort of touch base with what's going on. But you need to think about what you're assessing. What's really important to be assessing these children on? Is it key concepts? If you are using a curriculum, you can probably quickly identify 4 or 5 bullet points that they should be learning that year, some major themes that they're learning that year. So identify those key concepts by grade level, and maybe talk with your catechist to make sure they are emphasizing those, and just kind of ask your student about 2 or 3 of those to get a sense of, are they learning this information? Vocabulary is another very important area. We have a Catholic vocabulary that's to some degree borrowed by the greater Christian church at large, and sometimes we have very specific meanings. So we want to make sure that our children are learning these key terms and understanding them within the context of the Catholic Church. So the ACRE exam is something that I know parishes, schools certainly use, and parishes can use to sort of reinforce reinforce Catholic vocabulary so that the children are learning these key terms, especially identified year by year, so by grade level. And then, like Deacon Matt said, faith practice. What evidence of belief are we able to observe in a child or in their family? Evidence of prayer, evidence of worship, or evidence of acts of charity. Are they loving? Are they showing that they're understanding what we're teaching through their behavior? And those are great ways to sort of get a sense of, are our students learning and growing? Because ultimately, that's why we're here, right? We want them to learn, we want them to grow, we want them to live as disciples of Jesus. So the big question there, are they learning? That's a really, really important question about students. And then I would just say to sort of cap off assessing or evaluating your program, how are you assessing? Are you doing this face-to-face, or are you using something more formal? Is it in print format? Is it in digital format? Or especially when it gets into the classroom setting, are you doing formal type assessments with your children? A lot of parishes want to shy away from tests. We don't want students walking away feeling like they have a 50 in their faith development. So, you can use formal tests such as unit tests or lesson tests. You can certainly use informal ways of assessing their learning and growth, such as gamification. Make a game out of the content and ask questions and make it a competition. That's always been a way to sort of two things: increase the level of engagement and participation and excitement in the classroom, but also get a sense of, can they answer these questions? Did they learn anything? Or projects, having them to create a project toward the end of a class or a unit would be a great way for them to reflect on what they learned and create something new. And a lot of times that can be shared with your larger community. So it becomes a great way of hanging something in the hallway, or if it was created digitally, to share that with the parents or your parish community. So those are some informal ways. And then finally, just observational, that growth in virtue, again, that Deacon Matt spoke about. Do they have actions of generosity? Are they do they have a good attitude about learning faith and sharing faith? So you've got a lot of ways that you can really assess the students. And those are some of the ways. I'm sure there are many, many more, but those are some that we could practically bring to you tonight on Catechist Stream. What are your thoughts on that, Deacon Matt?
Oh my gosh, there was so much information, great stuff.
I'm sorry.
I think the big takeaway for me is the idea of the conversation. One, it's a lost art in our society. Two, it's so important as a means of accompanying people. So whether you're the diocesan leader or you're the parish catechetical leader, how you accompany those you work with in the vineyard to catechize, you do a lot of it through conversation. So a lot of the assessing and evaluating happens to these informal exchanges, and that doesn't make them less valuable or meaningful. What resonated for some, or what reverberated in my mind for whatever reason, was the new term from the Directory for Catechesis of casual catechesis. So maybe we're talking about casual evaluation. It kind of makes sense, and I like that. To make it simple is great, and it makes me think about, like, in each of the pillars of catechesis, or the catechism, I should say, like, for example, with the creed, and making these little observations. What do I see students doing? What do I hear them saying? When it comes to their moral life, what do I see students doing? What do I hear them saying? Just as simple as that. So I really liked the informal dynamic as part of the assessment. I think it's super important.
Well, thank you for sharing that. We're going to go back to our chat box and share a couple of posts that were put up here. So Andrea is saying that when I was a parish leader, I took time during the summer to meet with all the catechists in a casual setting. There you go. Many times in their homes. And I believe this is part 2, to just chat and talk about the year and what their hopes were for next year. So I think that taps into what you were saying, Deacon Matt, as far as casual evaluation.
Well, look at the early church, right? We say the catechumenate is the model for catechesis, or the inspiration for all catechesis. My gosh, for centuries, it was all based on observation. It was, what were the sponsors of the candidates saying about the candidates? It was, what was the local community observing in the candidates' behavior? Were they conforming more to gospel virtues and teaching? So observation plays a huge role.
Right. And Debbie chimes in and says, observation demonstrates how on fire the heart is from students through to catechists. So all the way through everyone in the program, really.
Right. Another way to put it is just witnessing. What's the witness?
What's the witness? That's
Can
right.
I get a witness?
Can I get a witness? How about a...
I'm so glad you keep hitting that button, because I thought we were not going to hear this until next Easter.
No way.
I love Handel's Messiah.
All right. Wish we had time for it all. But that would be a really long show. So let's move to our next topic.
We'd be like, it looks like their engagement is 0.
Or it might go crazy. Everyone's,
Who knows?
singing along. You never really know.
Off the handle for Handel.
Off
All
the
right.
hand-
Anyway,
Oh, that
so
was a good one.
capstone project. Oh, thank you. Capstone projects. I think DRE. I think backing up, what we're seeing a lot in just learning in general are these ideas of centered learning, activity-based time together in the classroom. We do our reading outside, and we come together and we do something that demonstrates knowledge transfer, demonstrates that we can apply something we've learned. And I think that is a wonderful practice to carry over within religious education, almost like the flipped classroom model. But in this sense, we're talking about at the ends of lessons, perhaps, or units, or even the end of a year, to do something that really puts activity and creativity at the center. And a lot of times we call that a capstone project, particularly in academic circles. But just coming up with something that really takes into consideration what were some primary themes that were discussed throughout whatever the period is that we're doing this capstone for. But finding a creative outlet for people to express their knowledge transfer, I think, is so important. And it's important because people, as we know, learn through doing things also. And we see a lot of that in confirmation with regards to service. And that's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful way to demonstrate, our desire to be a servant to our neighbor, etc. Our desire to love our neighbor, because as Jesus says, that's how they will know you are my disciples. But there are other things that we could use capstones or these sort of creative projects for. And, to demonstrate our understanding of the creed, for example, could we do some kind of artistic rendering of the Trinity, our own version? We don't have to keep borrowing from St. Patrick and go with the Shamrock, although you should check out our Catechist stream episode about that. But what could we create that can help symbolize our understanding of the Trinity? What can we create that can symbolize our understanding of the church? And perhaps it's actually building, making something, crafting something. Perhaps it's more along the lines of poetry or some other artistic medium, but something that captures people's creativity. And of course, it's going to be a push and pull with some people. Some people really love that maybe they're more right. I think it's right-brained, right? More into that. Some people have to push along, but to knowing that we have in front of us always diverse ways that people learn, I just think the capstone makes a lot of sense for a lot of reasons. Another way to look at your catechetical year is, how can I spice it up? How can I create more engagement? And not just with the people in front of me, but all those other stakeholders that we mentioned earlier. We mentioned parents, we mentioned the pastor. So one of the ways we could do that is through some kind of intergenerational event, which could also be used as some kind of capstone opportunity, but a way to bring families together to do some summary type learning, kind of allow children perhaps to teach their parents about a unit theme or something along those lines. So there are lots of models and lots of sort of ways to do intergenerational catechesis, but kind of culminating events. How can we bring parish families and folks together to learn and to celebrate what they've learned? Another idea is, if we did do along the way some kind of project, we created something perhaps as a class or at a grade level, to then show that at the end of the year, or show that at the end of the semester. Bring parents in, we look at them, it becomes a show and tell. And then we really do celebrate something that has been created because of our kids' faith. And hopefully they go from creating wonderful little things in RE class to creating a wonderful world for everybody else to live in because of their faith.
I love that. And we're going to share a link to our Gather in My Name resource. It's a fully developed intergenerational event list of resources for many of the feast days and church seasons that we experience as Catholics. So Debbie's going to drop that in the chat box for you here in just a second. When you were speaking, Deacon Matt, it made me recall that one of the parishes where I was a catechist had grade level prayers that students had to learn, and they were a big acre parish too. They wanted to make sure they had a word of the week, so every week all the students would be learning the same word. So they didn't limit it to grade levels, but it was a great way to just keep that Catholic vocabulary in front of them. But back to the prayer, the students for each grade level had to memorize a prayer. They had to learn the prayer, and there was teaching about the prayer all year. So prayer listeners would come periodically, I think around once a month, and listen to the children who were prepared and ready to go and pray that prayer. So I can see our link is here for Gather in My Name. So if that's a resource that you're interested in, go click on that. It's all free. And the prayer listeners would come, and by the end of the year, all of the students would have learned their prayer for the year. So that was a great way to, to sort of capstone, if you will, certain content and observe the children who had committed this to memory. And it's really a beautiful thing. And the excitement when they received their little certificate that they completed their prayer for the year. What a great keepsake and reminder that I was there in faith formation, and I did something and learned something.
Andrea, I'm just curious. Let us know if you've ever encouraged some kind of capstone for DREs, or you did that yourself, whether at like the lesson or unit level or at the end of the year. And if so, what did you do? And while you're thinking about that, I want to respond to Steve real quick. I love that idea of the prayer listener and the prayer, making prayer such a focus and making sure kids memorize it and can say it and say it in front of people. Because even as adults, one of the biggest hurdles, I think, for Catholics to jump is to be able to pray with other people. They always say, "Oh, I can't do it." As if there's this like, I don't know, some kind of theological rubric for prayer or something, and everyone's worried that they're going to fail or not say something right. But praying with people is such a blessing, and to make children feel comfortable with that it puts them so far ahead of the game, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And there's so many aspects of that are positive. So it was good for everyone involved. The prayer listeners were not the full-time catechists, if you will. That was their role. That was how they volunteered.
That is cool.
And that's what they did. And so I could go on about other aspects of the relationships and things like that. But it was really a beautiful thing. And if that's something you're not currently doing, or your parishes are not, feel free to take that idea as your own and embrace that. So we're still looking for Andrea's feedback that you challenged her with. But I will say that you asked her, what's your role? She's director of catechesis in the Diocese of Syracuse. So thanks for sharing that. And again, thanks for joining us tonight, Andrea. We really appreciate that. So now we're going to... we are going to test your knowledge. So we've got a sort of a new feature that we've introduced called Reeling It In. So we're going to reel it in now with you, and we want to test you to see what you learned tonight, if anything, based on our topic. So we've got some questions for you.
Yeah, so first question, and we talked about goals. What's one kind of goal we talked about tonight? What's one kind of goal we talked about tonight?
Ooh, that's a good question. Oh, here's another question for you while you're thinking. And think about this. What might you assess differently next year? Or who might you assess next year in a different way that you did in the past?
I have to interject, Steve. We've got breaking news from Andrea here. She says, we are planning to put a capstone project at the end of our catechist certification process, in which the learner is to create a lesson to incorporate all that was in our process.
Ah, beautiful. How about that?
Cool. All right. Well, then I think Andrea kind of answered a capstone idea. That was my question. What capstone ideas might you have? That's a great one, Andrea.
That is a great one. And what way to go, way to be a role model and to get that out there. So I would be really interested to hear what you come up with in the way of a capstone project.
Yeah.
Yep. So that is our reeling it in segment for tonight. And I think we had a lot of success with that.
I do too. I love that. We're going to have to do one of these here, and then you're going to be like, ooh, ooh, ooh. You're gonna reel in.
Yeah. I was looking for some footage. That's all I could come up with for this week. So you never know when it might change, though. Speaking of change, we before I go to that, we talked about goal setting. We talked about evaluation and capstone projects. We want to provide you with a free Sadlier resource. So we are going to give you this QR code. Feel free to, there's the link for it. Take a photo with your phone of the QR code, and that will take you right to the website. And Debbie's going to put up the the URL. I'm getting all of my letters jumbled. She's going to put up the URL for you if you just want to type it in, and it should drop into the chat box for you. So we're going to put that in the chat box for you. And I'm just looking. Andrea's. She says on the fly fishing. That's right. So if you notice the connection, this is Catechist stream, and so we're trying to make a few connections here and there, and I love that with the fly fishing. So we'll have to get that a little more intentional. What do you say, Deacon Matt?
Nope. I love being more intentional.
More intentional. So we are also introducing a new segment tonight called Off the Wire.
We're using like streaming technology, and we're showing a telegraph.
Yeah, only
That's
on
awesome.
Catechist Stream. So we are coming to you from our news anchor desk, and that's right. We are here live in the Off the Wire studio, and cool. I'm freezing in here. What do you?
My office is truly freezing. It is like a meat locker. So that's no lie.
Let's see if I can join you again. I'm being shy. Here I come. Deacon Matt, what is Off the Wire, and what do you have for us tonight?
All right. So part of the mission of Catechist Stream is to make sure that we're talking about relevant issues, things going on in the church that like might directly touch on catechesis, but might just be part of the ethos. So one of those things we thought we'd introduce tonight with this Off the Wire segment, and that is that last Sunday in France, we had 12,000 people attend the beatification of Pauline Marie Jaricot. She's a turn of the 19th century lay woman, and that's important because we don't have a lot of lay saints, and that's been an important intention. Talk about intentional. That's been an intention of Pope Francis. So her beatification was on Sunday. She was the founder of the Propagation of the Faith, which supported missionary work around the world. This was developed in the mid to late 19th century. She also founded a Rosary Society in France, spent all of her money supporting the church in various missions and supportive service-orientated ways. She actually died penniless and at a fairly young age, but she did not die without joy. There is a miracle attributed to her. It was a 3-year-old girl named Maylene Tran. She had suffered a heart attack due to, at 3, she had some kind of asphyxiation where the oxygen was cut off to her brain, caused a heart attack. She went into a coma, and the doctors didn't think that she would live. They asked for Pauline Jaricot's intercession. Then eventually she came out of the coma and is doing very well. Now she's 13 years old, and what a wonderful story. So that is the miracle attributed to her. So Pauline Marie Jaricot, turn of the 19th century, blessed now, and hopefully they'll be on your saint radar.
Wow. Let's hear it. Was that? No? Okay, sorry. I said I wasn't going to keep triggering those sound effects, but I can't help myself. Well, that was your off the wire segment for tonight. Only on Catechist Stream.
There's a lot of pink TVs out there.
Yeah, there are a lot of pink TVs. Well, we want to thank you for joining Catechist Stream, and let's not forget to thank our host Sadlier.
Oh, I do want to say real quick. Andrea said the links aren't coming in the chat.
The links are not coming in the chat.
Right.
Okay, let me see what I can do to work on that. I'm not sure if this is going to let me do that or not.
While you're doing that, Andrea, do you have a particular saint that you have a devotion to? Who is that saint? Let us know.
Okay, I just dropped a link. Let's see if you get that. That should be available in YouTube and Facebook, so check that out. So thanks, Sadlier, for hosting Catechist Stream. We really appreciate that. Sadlier's been serving the growing and ever-changing needs of the religious education community, the faith formation community, for 190 years.
Yeah.
It's quite amazing. Well, thanks for joining Catechist Stream and for what you do to share the good news of Jesus Christ.
Tell someone about Catechist Stream. Just point them to the website, as it has all the details on how to view the stream, or if you want to share on social media, use the web address and add hashtag Catechist Stream so we can find your post and share it.
That's right. And next Monday, looking ahead just a bit, next Monday is Memorial Day. And so we have prepared a special pre-recorded show that's highlighting the themes of remembrance and gratitude in honor of the day, Memorial Day. So that will be airing Monday night at 7:30. It will be pre-recorded, but it is just for you. So come back and see us.
Should we pray?
Yeah, let's do that.
All right, this is our Catechist Stream prayer, so please join me. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
Jesus, being a catechist can sometimes feel like swimming upstream. At times, the ministry can be stressful, challenging, even exhausting. But we know that you are here and that you will lead us upstream as you call us to continue to share the truth of your love and mercy with others. Amen.
Amen.
In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, Deacon Matt. Deacon Matt wrote that prayer, by the way, for Catechist Stream.
I did. Well, never forget that you are important. You are called by God and are doing wonderful things for God and his church. And until next time,
keep swimming
upstream.
There we go.
We're going to get this one of these days where we say it at the exact same time.
That's right. Bye, guys. Have a great week.
Have a great week.